Welcome to the Grow Renaissance podcast. Let's nourish the world.
All right, welcome back everyone to another episode of the Grow Renaissance podcast. I'm super excited here. We have Jake Dieterich with us. Did I say your last name correctly?
Yeah, Dieterich. I know there's a lot of vowels in there, so a lot of people get it wrong sometimes.
Yeah, wasn't sure exactly, but it was a good guess, I guess. But we're super excited to have you on. Thanks for jumping on with me.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So Jake, I know you're a big community member with Grow and with Connect more generally, and but give us a little bit of your background, how you got into blockchain, Web3, just your story there, I guess.
Okay. Yeah. I wouldn't say it was really an accident how I kind of got involved, but just had a really good friend that kind of pulled my eyes wide open to actually take a look at it because um, I had more of a traditional like finance background. Like I was really big into like trading securities, like stocks and options and everything. And whenever Bitcoin first started coming about, my mind went straight to like, that's fake. That's a Ponzi scheme. That's, just something that someone's selling on the internet and scamming everyone. And I wouldn't look into it. And then I'd watch it, 100% like 3 days in a row and everything. And just telling myself like, that's parabolic. I'm not even going to even look that way at all. And so I had some other friends that were getting involved and everything. I was just kind of laughing at them and doing my own thing. I was starting to get into real estate at the time too. And I would never take a look at it. And finally, I had a friend that just said, hey, just buy one of these miners. We'll get it all plugged in and stuff. You can side chain mine some stuff and, just get involved in this, especially with your power industry background. So I purchased into that and did some mining for about a year. I really didn't even pay attention to it at all. It was just kind of to shut him up. And so it was almost exactly a year later, I think. He called me on, I think it was like a Monday or something like that. And I was at the house. He called me at like 10:30 or 11. He's like, hey, how can you be in Vegas tonight? I was like, I guess so. Let me look. And I checked flights, and that flight was literally leaving like 30 minutes from that time. And so I hopped on that because I live right by the airport. And so I hopped on that flight, took a little puddle jumper over, landed in Dallas, had a layover there, and then ended up in Vegas like late that night at like 11 p.m. And so whenever he came out to get me, he was like, there are some major, major players here. You may want to pay attention to all this. And really, I just took all this on a whim off of what he said. He was talking about the Overstock.com interim CEO was there, and like some of the developers for MySpace, and one of the founders of Zynga was there, and some developers for like Farmville and Mafia Wars, Words with Friends, like all those games that we had played all through college. And so I was like, okay, this sounds pretty big. Like if you have some ballers like that all here. So we went to sleep, and I woke up the next day to kind of check out what everyone was talking about. And these are very, very, very smart people that I would happen to be in the room with, and just being around all these people and realizing that they're excited about what's being talked about in this room. And again, I had no clue whatsoever, but I did know it was kind of crypto. I didn't know what blockchain was, and that was the missing key that I never had. I didn't understand that crypto, this buzzword of crypto or Bitcoin had this underlying technology that I never looked into. And it was actually one of the developers, his name's Michael McCarthy, that made Farmville 2 and a few of those other developments that I got to talking with him. And, I wasn't really in the gaming space anymore. That was more just, college days and everything. But what he was talking about, I was familiar with. Like I knew like all the kids at the time were playing like Fortnite and some of these other games where it had like the microtransactions in them where you can buy like different skins for like the characters and the weapons and stuff in the games. And
Mm-hmm.
he told me, this is a black hole. Like people are spending money for these games and it goes nowhere. It's not an asset. It's nothing that you can actually keep or retain. So what if you could actually keep that as an asset? And that opened up this whole new world to me. It brought up the talk of like NFTs, the non-fungible tokens. And uh, he really just talked about all the problems in the gaming industry that I had no idea. He had some very interesting outlooks. He had worked on some games in the past, really big games, I think like Call of Duty and some of those other ones. And he was frustrated as a developer. So, I only understood maybe the consumer side of it, of like just people constantly being squeezed out of their money and on to the next best thing. But he talked about from the development side, where he would come up with an amazing concept, maybe some artwork, and he would go pitch it to a boardroom. And that boardroom would say, well, it sounds interesting. I guess I could kind of understand like why you would want to make this, but we don't have any data that says that this will be successful. What we do have is the last game we released and it made this much money. So basically take that, change it up a little bit, reskin it, and put it back out there because we know that makes money. And that made him sick because everything's like a
Mm-hmm.
cookie cutter, It's just stamping
Yeah.
out and it's all about profits. Nothing's about entertainment and creating something for the community and the end user that they would actually love, which is the whole reason they come back. They're kind of over a barrel at this point.
Uh-huh.
And he talked about, this system being owned by the community, this network that has all of these assets and all of these different things. And whatever the community wants could be developed and actually have this true ownership to where, now the producer is almost a part of the community with the consumer, and it makes it a much more symbiotic relationship. And that just opened up my mind to everything that blockchain technology can can tackle. So I left that event just very, very, very enthused about all this. So I went down the rabbit hole very, very,
Yeah.
very fast.
It's
And
a
I'm
deep
sure
hole
like
too.
all the listeners here, and I'm sure you've had kind of the same experience once you kind of hear about it.
Yeah.
But um, once I started researching that, I became a huge lover of Bitcoin. I actually purchased some Bitcoin after that event. And then I did get into that community, that node network, which at the time was Arcade. It's called Gala now. I'm sure plenty of people have heard about it. It's been in the top 10 on Coin Market Cap and a few other things. And I sat there and I, supported the community quite a bit. I earned digital rewards from operating my node in that network. Had some very, very, very good success with that. I was able to pay off my parents' house and do some really cool stuff that came about that. And that's pretty much how I discovered Web3 was. I mean, really, I was just lucky enough to have a friend that kind of forced me into it. And I fell in love with
Yeah.
it ever since, just from being ignorant and naive and not looking into it.
Yeah. No, I feel like I mean, I know I've had a very similar experience, and I think a lot of people kind of do. Like, I remember in high school when Bitcoin was kind of stirring the pot a little bit, and people would like make comments, and it was all the same stuff, like oh, that's a scam. Like, what do you mean it's like digital? Like you can just make another one or something. But there really is like that whole underlying technology that I didn't know about until a couple year and a half ago or something. But it's really cool how like in video games it was such a big deal for the producer and the consumer to be connected, but like how much more important is that with our food? Like we need that to live. It's a little more important than just video games. So what was your like, how'd you like, so you got into that one, and then what really caught your eye, made you excited about Grow, would you say?
Yeah, I mean, it's that like once I went down that rabbit hole of Web3 and realizing true ownership and transparency, we all know that our food needs that. We have
Hmm.
no idea what we're consuming. We know that it's bad for us. If you start becoming health conscious, like everyone knows that that's the base layer. Like that's absolutely
Yeah.
what we need. And yeah, I mean, gaming it's a niche market. Like it does have a major community behind it, but you're right.
Mhm.
Everyone eats food. Everyone consumes food, and that problem of transparency and just the quality of products that are produced, or just the food quality, absolutely needs an overhaul. And that's
Mhm.
one of the things that drew me to it. But then the other thing that I had actually started researching, I don't know how I stumbled upon it, but it was the FDA had put something out not too long after I'd started getting involved in blockchain, which was the FSMA Rule 204 about food transparency and traceability. It passed in, I think, 2022. And knowing that every single food producer over a certain amount, whether they're actually not just the producers, but like if they're in the manufacturing or distribution, that they have to
Mhm.
have transparency by 2026, coming up next year. And
Yeah.
seeing that, like there's like this uh, regulatory agency that is almost forcing this, which I'm not too big of a proponent on like major regulations or like governments telling businesses what to do, but food is one of those things that we really need to get a handle on, because all the different bad ingredients that are put into it needs to be regulated. And
Yeah.
knowing that that's coming, my mind instantly went to grow. And it was awesome that those two things came to me like at the same time. So I was like, I really could see this being the solution or the platform to help support that. Because whenever I look at some of the FAQs, like, okay, how are they going to do this traceability and transparency? And you look at all the FAQs on that government site, and it's like all these producers saying, well, how do we do this, or what system do y'all have built for us? And it looked like the FDA was just basically responding back like, well, that's up to the producer to come up with that. We don't know how
Mhm.
to do it. And the producers are saying we don't know how to do it. So
Yeah.
why not have something that's already built, like a node network that can support all these things? And like I said, I truly can see Grow being one of those things that could help support this in my eyes.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I've um into what looking into what you're talking about. Some of the big issues that a lot of those producers and manufacturers have is one, like, how do we even do it, and then two, is it going to be just crazy expensive, and then food prices go through the roof, right?
Yeah.
And that's like blockchain, specifically Grow, can solve both those issues. Is like we can do it, we can track and trace the food and put it on a public ledger and everyone can see it, and then it's also not going to be expensive because it's a community network. Like you own a node, you run a node, that's, you don't have to be paying some company to run that and to be tracking your food on it. So it
Yeah.
really kind of solves both issues there.
And even that, like you talked about paying a company like a third party, like we already know that we can't even trust third parties.
Yeah.
They can be paid off, they can fake data and share
Mhm.
whatever is in the best interest of these producers and let them continue the same game. But
Yeah,
you
because
know,
that's basically what they're doing now.
yeah, well, they do it in multiple industries. Like one of the
Mhm.
ones I always think about is the gold industry, like, or different commodities, like even silver. You know,
Mhm.
they mine these different commodities, and then they sell them on paper, through whatever platforms that people use, like your stock exchange and everything else. And we really don't know
Yeah.
if that amount of gold actually exists out there. Like we have no clue. They've already
Yeah.
shown that they've oversold it. They've sold more paper gold than actually is in circulation. So they've overshorted the price and driven the price down. And that's what excited me about whenever BlackRock came up with the Bitcoin ETF. So many people at first were worried, well, the same thing will happen. They'll just drive the price of Bitcoin down. But that's not true, because now there's no longer just these third party auditors that we trust that are going to go to a warehouse and check if the gold's there. There's no warehouse for Bitcoin. We don't have to trust the third party. We the community can actually go audit those things. And there are community auditors that are going to do this. So if they ever wanted to sell more shares in that ETF than they actually had in their own holdings, it would be found out very, very, very quickly. The entire
Yeah.
world can audit these things whenever it comes to blockchain. And so same thing
Yeah.
with food. We don't have to
Mhm.
trust the third party. We as the community in the world can actually index and look at the blockchain and make sure no nefarious actions are taking place.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. Shout out to the Element blockchain for the gold and silver. So,
Yeah, for
um,
sure.
but no, it really is. I mean, I think there's just a big movement, specifically in America, just because that's where I live and pay attention to stuff. But um, that people want to know where their food is coming from, know what's going in their food. Because I mean, when you go down that rabbit hole of trying to eat healthy, and then all of a sudden you're like, I can't eat anything.
Yep.
You're like, what? It's pretty tough. So it's very very important, and it's exciting for us, and but it's also a big issue that we can solve, and that's what's very exciting about it. Um, but what are, I mean, in your experience, what have been like your personal benefits from just like Web3, the community aspect of it, just that kind of stuff? Like, what kind of benefits have you seen from being in this community?
Well, I mean, it's definitely opened up a whole new lifestyle that I kind of mentioned. But outside of
Mhm.
that, I think it's really changed and like rewired how my mind works. And I think it's going to do it for everyone eventually, of taking more ownership and participation. Like now, I have private equity in different companies that I've invested in as like a passive investor, and they're very weirded out by my approach because I feel like because I have ownership in this, like I need to contribute to it. I need to like, do you need any help with social media? Do you need me to do this? And they're used to just people staying on the sidelines, not participating at all, and just getting shareholder updates and
Mhm.
different things like just my community around here. If I notice something needs to be changed, and like I said, this sounds so weird that I say this, but I think
Uh,
that people will catch on to what I'm saying eventually. Um, if there's like something weird with a street light, like a new street light, like the timing's off, or there's like a pothole or something, like it's so easy in the Web 2 world right now. I think it'll get even better with Web 3 and maybe eventually be rewarded to do things I'm talking about. But like reporting these things to the city, like this is your community, this is what you travel on. Why do I have to wait for some city inspector to drive around and find these issues? If I can go ahead and fast track that to them, it doesn't take any time out of my day other than like writing an email or putting a support ticket in and getting these
mhm.
problems solved so that our community can thrive. Uh, I
Yeah.
also think about going to local restaurants, or if they actually have like an application and there's some bugs in it, like I want this business to succeed. I want to continue purchasing food or whatever it is from this business. So why wouldn't I want to help them out as much as I can so they can help me out continuously and not go out of business? It's something that
Mhm.
really blows my mind that I wasn't aware about. With like I'm sure you're in like a local Facebook group or something with your
Yeah.
town, and it drives me crazy now that if there's a new restaurant, like there's a new restaurant, for instance, that comes in, and you'll watch someone just trash that company first week open, and terrible service, food was terrible, uh,
Yeah.
the lighting was bad, whatever it is that they complain about, and it's like they're deterring the rest of the community to even go try it. Instead,
Mhm.
why don't you bring these things up to the business owner, help them make something that is beneficial to the community? Because if not, all you're going to do is drive them out of business. The next one's going to come in, and it's like a baby trying to crawl and then
Yeah.
eventually walk. And you're just sitting there kicking it every time it tries to get up. And it's,
Uh-huh.
that's like the selfish nature, I guess, of like where humanity's gotten. And they lost that symbiotic relationship of I want this to succeed, so that I can continue using it, which in turn, helps the success of my life and my lifestyle. And I
Hmm.
think that that's the biggest benefit that I've gathered from all this is it's changed me as a person to where now collectively we have more and more people within our community that are helping do this same mindset shift. You know, and then again, outside of that, like just personally, I've gotten on very, very, very amazing trips. Met some really cool people in this space. I got to go hang out at Snoop Dogg's compound in Inglewood, and get to hang out and meet all of them because of this.
Wow.
BT, one of the famous DJs, went and traveled all over Europe. That was for one of the Galaverse events there, and I'll share some cool stuff that I learned from about food in Europe here in a minute. But that's just
Oh,
you know overall, like I mean, it's changed my entire life. And I just
yeah.
I can't put enough emphasis on being thankful enough to be able to participate in this level this early on.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. I do think it really shifts your mindset from just like what can it's all about me, like everything I'm doing, working for my own money, and it's all about benefiting me. But then in Web3, it's like I can take actions and do these things that benefit everybody. Like I get benefit from it, but so does everybody else in the community. So it's one of those things like you're just bigger than you're part of something that's bigger than just you, and doing the little things, like with growth specifically, like supporting the vendors on the Nourish marketplace. Like maybe you'd never really buy coffee from, the angry roaster who we have on there, but he's on there, so like I'm gonna try his coffee or whatever it is, um, and that benefits the whole community, really strengthens everybody. So, but I want to hear about your European food. What was that about?
Yeah, well, it was funny, man. Whenever we went over there, I really wasn't worried about eating right or anything else. Like we're basically on vacation, and
Hmm.
so I'm eating pizzas and pastas, drinking sodas, and I saved some of the labels just because I wanted them. Everything's in a different language, and it was a cool keepsake. So I have like a Coca
Yeah.
Cola label and like some peanut M&Ms, and I was eating terribly, and
Yeah.
I know I was walking some, like we went around like the Colosseum at Rome, and just all over the place. But I
Hmm.
don't feel like I was walking that much more than I do just you know around work or around my neighborhood and everything. And whenever I came
Yeah.
home, I was expecting like check the scale and like, oh my gosh, I gained like 15 pounds or something. But I'd actually lost like close to 10 pounds. And that blew my mind until, you start looking at Europe has tighter regulations on what's in their food. And I compared those labels, like that Coca-Cola label was probably a
Hmm.
third of the ingredient list as the ones over here. And those peanut M&Ms, like same thing, just not
Yeah.
many ingredients in comparison. And just realizing how much of a handle they have on their food uh, means that, like, here in the States, we for sure need an overhaul.
Yeah.
They can heavily benefit from going even further with ownership and transparency over there. But it really opened my eyes to how bad the food is over here. I'm losing
Yeah.
weight and I'm eating what I thought was terrible.
Yeah. Dang, that's crazy. And did it taste any different, or could you tell?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely like a little bit or a little less sweet, but for the
Mm.
most part, I mean, it was still very enjoyable.
Yeah, that's crazy. I've never been to Europe, or I've never even been to another country actually. So I've never had that experience, but I've seen, on social media, I think it's kind of been going around like those different labels, and it's like, what is all this stuff that nobody can pronounce and
Yeah,
nobody has
exactly.
any idea what it is? Like, it's it's crazy. But no, I do think like, I mean, the grow community, like that's really what it's all about, is building the community, and really just asking yourself like, what can I do as a community member to help out? And some people can help in different ways than others, and but everybody can make an impact, and make a small difference. And that's something that Royal Family Farming, that we're always thinking about, and obviously we're in it at a pretty deep level and can, we're farmers, so we grow food, and we can, maybe some people feel like we can make a bigger impact than they can. But, that's one thing we're always thinking about is like, okay, how do we leverage the blockchain? How do we bring more utility to the grow token? How do we, you know, whether that's more products or talking to some of our neighboring farms, like, hey, you guys should check this out, sell your stuff on there. And so we're always thinking about that. And I think that's just something that people can do in their own personal life on a small level, just, what can I do? Who can I talk to? Or, what little farmer can I kind of tell about this? And then send him, give him my email. And if he has more questions, I can answer deeper questions. But, planting those seeds, I think, make a big difference. And that's what we need, is just a community, because that's what it is. It's a community driven project. It's not just a couple people doing everything. So.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, that is a huge part of what the community, or just what makes a good community member. And I'll mention, like, man, all of the Royal Family products, like, I've bought pretty much everything off the Nourish Mart. It's, exceptional. Like, I love getting the steaks and cooking all of those, and uh,
Yeah.
really diving into that. But you're right. Like, that's what it takes to, get this infant off the ground to where it can eventually walk and then run as this, this giant that we see and envision for all of this.
Mhm.
Simply being a node operator and building out the network is a really good way to participate. But sharing this with everyone, the masses utilizing this network and really building this out is where the real success of all this is going to happen, and I truly see that happening. Um, and I participate in both ways. Like, I use some of my digital rewards I've earned from my node, and I participate and purchase products and services with that. But then I also like to think from the average consumer side, because one thing that we really have to understand is we are so early on as far as like building out the node network. It's already massive. Like, I'm pretty sure there's more nodes in network than there are Ethereum nodes already.
Yeah.
But like, one thing that you always have to remember is there's only 100,000 nodes, and then that's it. Like, that's a very finite, very low number whenever you're talking about mass world adoption. And
Yeah.
I own more than one node, and I know tons of people own more than one node. So that means less than 100,000 node owners, that'll actually be supporting the network. So how does the average consumer participate? And so I like to put my consumer hat on and operate like they do sometimes too, which means they want to participate. They want, transparent and traceable food. They want to know exactly what's been sprayed on it, fed to it, the weight, the age, like all these things that are traceable on the blockchain. And they say, okay, I want that. I want to absolutely know where my food is coming from and what all's, involved in it from when it's produced to my dinner table. Well, they're for sure not going to get that from the store. So now you're talking about replacement spending. I'm no longer going to go to the grocery store and spend my money there. Like, I'm already doing that though. This money's already coming out of my checking account, and I'm doing this. So now, if I want to go to the Nourish Mart, okay, I understand there's a little bit of a middle step there. I have to use the Grow network to be able to purchase this. So now I'm going to go purchase the Grow token, and I do this regularly. I purchase Grow token and then utilize that inside of the Nourish Mart. That's the utility that the mass world is going to be, collectively overall. That small percentage can actually utilize their digital rewards that they earn from their nodes, but the rest of the world, the demand for the products and services is the demand for the Grow token. So they're going to have to source the Grow token to be able to utilize the network to purchase these products and services. So I do like to participate like that as well, and
Hmm.
really get that story so that others can understand, like, exactly what they're going to need to do whenever the time comes that they want to actually participate in all this.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I think there's a lot of little things like that that everyone can do. Another one is just simply, following Grow on all the social media and sharing the post. Maybe you're not a big, like, you don't like, just talking to people, bringing up Grow or whatever. Maybe you feel like kind of pushy or whatever, but it's super easy you see a post from Grow and share it on your story, or, like and comment or something, just little things like that even can make a huge difference. So there's a lot of different ways. And I love what you were saying there about, if I'm going to go to the store and I need honey and I'm going to buy some honey, why not just buy Grow tokens and then buy it off the Nourish Mart, support the vendors there. So, it's a great way to use the blockchain and to help everyone in the community. But from your experience with Gala, this will be kind of our wrap up here. What did the community do that really launched Gala to a new level?
I think collectively, uh, getting into Discord was like a really, really big thing for Gala. I feel, like getting everyone into one place and really collaborating on different things, like how they're going to share this opportunity with people. And it wasn't really, I say opportunity, but it's really just a new way of thinking, and how to participate inside of this new community, that actually owns itself. Because it's such a new world that you really do have to kind of explain it to people a few times before they fully grasp it. And I think going out and then reaching people back in to Discord and start chatting inside of there was how people were able to get this education level going. Uh, Outside of that, just going out for those outside people, like share this. Like, how many times in your life do you actually get a chance to be a part of a movement, something this big? You really don't. Like, I've never been able to go look at a company, unless I was going to go work for it and say, hey,
Yeah.
we're going to change the way that the world operates. I couldn't go just be a part of the Apple community. Sure, I could buy a phone or something whenever they first came out, and I could tell my friends about this cool phone, but I couldn't actually be a part of shaping. I couldn't go talk with Steve Jobs and say, hey, I think that this may be a cool idea. Maybe the community wants this, um, and you can actually have that interaction with the companies that are building on top of this blockchain. Like right now, I'm sure there are plenty of people that wish that they could communicate with the CEO of Apple and talk about it as a community. Like, we hate that y'all no longer put chargers in here. We're sitting
Yeah.
here buying a $2,000 phone and having to go buy a $30 charger to charge it with. Um,
Yeah.
Companies
No headphone
are
jack.
so used. Do what?
There's no headphone jack anymore.
Yeah, that too. Exactly. I mean, all these things
Yeah.
that the consumer wants, and they're just being taken away from them. And the companies realize that they can rake the consumer over the coals, because what else are they going to do? They may say, okay, well, they may go to an Android for a little bit, but then they'll come back. And really, that's because these companies are, they're serving their investors. That's it. You know,
Mm-hmm.
they will do the bare minimum to keep their consumers there and keep them semi happy, but not really do anything that they want, because ultimately all they care about is getting the profits to give to their investors. And there's not that symbiotic relationship between the producer and the consumer.
Yeah.
But with blockchain, there are no investors. There are none. It's community built, community driven, and if that producer does not serve that community or that consumer, they're going to be tossed to the side, and they're going to find a new producer to build on their blockchain. So uh,
Yeah.
I think going out and sharing that vision and what blockchain can actually solve, like all the problems and solutions that it has that can solve, is one of the biggest things you can do as a community member. So really deep dive, grasp what's all being built here, and then go share it with the world.
Mm-hmm.
We want everyone to be involved in this. We want to change the world. We want to really make the Grow network and all of the businesses that are being built on it to thrive. And that's the way to do it, is to bring masses in and get that adoption level that we need.
Yeah. No, I love that. yeah, just kind of along that topic, one thing my brother told me, he's going to college, and he said he walked into, I can't remember, some kind of like personal finance, or no, it was like an entrepreneurship class. And the first thing the professor said was like, what's the main goal of like every corporation? And my brother was thinking like, oh, to help people, or to make a product that people want or something. And he was like, no, the main goal of every corporation is to keep the shareholders happy. And it's like, that's true. I mean, as long as those guys are making money, they don't care. Why would they? And so it's really kind of a sad truth. And when my brother was telling me, he was not happy about it. It kind of hit him hard, I think. But
Yeah, well, that's the
but
broken
it's a
world that
sad
we've
truth.
been living in. I mean,
Yeah.
it's upside down and backwards, and I really
Mm.
do feel like blockchain kind of brings us back to like how we naturally supposed to be. If if we're going to have a trade, it needs to be an equitable trade, right? Like you should be
Mhm.
happy with your decision and not just be surviving. We should be thriving.
Yeah. No, I love it. So I think this has been an awesome conversation. And once again, thank you so much for coming on here, Jake. It's been a pleasure. So
Yes, thank you so much. I look forward to
yeah,
more Grow Renaissance podcast.
for sure. All right. We'll talk to you later.
Take care.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Grow Renaissance podcast. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe this episode. Remember, it will take a community of us to do the best in the world and truly nourish not only ourselves, but the planet, the atmosphere, the soil, the plants, and the animals on it. So make sure you spread this message anywhere that you can.